Hey guys, I have to be really quick this time. I'm getting ready for parent-teacher interviews, but I still need to get you a video. And this video is pretty deep, so we're going to go into some pretty full-on content. So, after exploring the thought experiment, we need to now look at objectivity and subjectivity, and how we can use objectivity and subjectivity to account for different things, okay? And then think about the mind-body problem. How do we discuss the issue of the body? How do we discuss the issue of the mind? How do we discuss these things, given that some phenomena are better described using objective language and others are better described using using subjective language, all right? So our overall goal today is that we're going to explore what types of accounts can be separated by how we consider subjectivity and objectivity. And that's really convoluted, but it'll become very apparent for why that is convoluted when we go through the summary section of the video. So we need to draw on our prior knowledge about Nagel's distrust of material reductionism. If you remember, he's saying that material reductionism has difficulties accounting for the first person subjective point of view of phenomenal consciousness or phenomenal experience. Then we need to explore phenomena that can be accounted for by objective accounts and the different ones that are accounted for by subjective accounts. You could probably predict what they are going to be. And then we're going to explore the link between consciousness and experience and place experience on a continuum between objectivity and subjectivity. So do me the favour of writing these down in your workbook and quickly scoring yourself on each of those. And once you've done that, can you pretty please, with the cherry on top, draw a picture that you would use to explain lightning to an alien. And that'll become a bit obvious as we go through the summary as well. Okay, cheers. Okay, so we already know that Nagel has a bit of a distrust of materialist reductionist theories because their language doesn't really account for or allow us to know that first-person phenomenal quality of subjective experience or consciousness, okay? It's hard to know the nature of that subjective first-person account using objective physical kind of language or using physical reductionist languages, okay? So how do we actually know the point of view, the singular point of view of a person using scientific language which privileges objective accounts over subjective accounts, okay? So it's really hard then to understand how you can observe the subjective phenomena and how things happen subjectively, or more importantly, consciousness, right, by using observations and accounts that are based on neurophysiological or physical principles, because that language is primarily objective language. Take a note. Physical facts tend to be explained by objective language, whereas we know that really only subjective accounts of consciousness can do. Okay? So, when we talk about physical facts and we use objective language, we know that they can be seen and understood by many different people who have a different point of view, because the language allows us to understand objectively what's going on outside of our point of view. Take a note. Alright. But obviously, that's when we talk about the neurophysiological process of a bat's brain or a human's brain. We're talking about the physical process. That's not necessarily an explanation of the subjective phenomenal character of a person's conscious experience, okay? People will really only be able to understand the objective account, which is the neurophysiological account, but they might not have a full grasp of the subjective point of view, okay? Take a note. So while we can't really get a bat, we don't think, to understand the neurophysiological processes of the bat, we could imagine a very intelligent alien being able to understand the neurophysiological or the objective scientific account of how brain processes occur. And we could then also argue that perhaps subjective experience might be a result of it. But we still can't account for subjective experience, okay? Take a note. So the alien could easily understand the neurophysiological processes of our brains, or the physical objective processes, because they are objective accounts. And as we said before, many different people with many different points of view can understand the same objective account. All right. And also, the thing that we might want to point out is that we could even agree on the objective account of how a rainbow occurs, even if that alien was blind or didn't have visual senses, because we could argue that the alien would somehow understand the objective phenomena of a rainbow using other senses, or it just has an understanding of the objective phenomena outside of us, okay? Which is very different from getting the alien to understand that first-person point of view, the subjective phenomenal experience of a human being, all right? So Smart's theory could still be quite valid, right? It could still be that material processes underpin human experience and human sensation. But for Nagel, what he's really trying to do in this section when we read is he's trying to talk about the fact that subjectivity and objectivity are really different poles, okay? And by that, if we were to describe lightning to someone else, or if we were to describe lightning to an alien, we most likely would use, these days especially, a really kind of objective account of it to explain how it works and what happens and what it is to other people, okay? But when it comes to experience, our subjective experience is so close to what consciousness is that it's really hard to use objective accounts of experience to explain to other people what it's like. It's so intimately linked, right? Take a note. And that's because when we explain the consciousness phenomena or the experience phenomena, we're really talking about something that's way over this part of the pole, which is trying to argue for a phenomena that has to be explained using subjective accounts, okay? So experience is so separate. It's just coming from a completely separate point of view. When we talk about a person's experience, experience is basically a person's point of view, which is completely separate from what anyone else. But, and here's what's really important, an objective count of experience might partially describe what experience is, because we still need to be able to understand that people have experience. So an alien could understand that we actually have experiences, okay, which are like their experiences. So there must be an element of experience that is objective, because we get that overlap. Remember I said before that objective phenomena tend to be understood by many different people from points of views. Well, an alien has its own point of view and we have our own point of view. And if we could both understand that we have some kind of experience and we can make a reasonable approximation of some of the qualities of that experience, then there must be something a little bit objective about it, but experience is mostly subjective, okay? Take a note. Alright, let's start the reading. Now remember, reading is about nuance, so we've come up with a brief summary of this stuff. Now we go over the extra bits which weren't captured by the summary, okay? I shall not pursue this subject, however. Its bearing on the topic before us, namely the mind-body problem, is that it enables us to make a general observation of the subjective character of experience. This is where he's just leaving off the explanation about schemas and how human beings might not even be able to form the schemes needed to understand what it is like to be a bat, okay? Whatever be the status of facts about what it is like to be a human being or a bat or a Martian, these appear to be the facts that embody a particular point of view. So he's saying, look, what it's like to be embodies a particular point of view. Write that down. That's a note. That's a really important way to understand his theory. I'm not adverting here to the alleged privacy of experience to its possessor. So he's not saying, I'm not going to the privacy argument. Let's look up averting on Google, shall we, so we can get a really accurate understanding of what averting means. Because it's one of those words we don't use that often. Adverting. Meaning. It means advertising or advocating for. Referring to in speaking or writing. So he's saying, I'm not referring to. Why did you say referring? I'm not adverting here to the alleged privacy of experience to its possessor. So he's saying here and now, I'm not really talking about the privacy of the possessor of experience. The point of view in question is not the accessible only to a single individual. The point of view in question is not one accessible only to one single individual. Rather, it is a type. It is often possible to take up a point of view other than one's own. So the comprehension of such facts is not limited to one's own case. So here he's really starting to talk about experience rather than consciousness. And there has to be, like, you can, to a reasonable degree, approximate another human being's point of view. You can understand it. You can't completely understand it because consciousness is involved, but experience in itself has some overlap, so you can understand it just a little bit. There's an objective nature to it. There is a sense in which phenomenological facts are perfectly objective. One person can know or say another what the quality of the other's experience is. Yep. They are subjective, however, in the sense that even this objective ascription of experience is possible only for someone sufficiently similar to the subject of ascription to be able to adopt his point of view. I.e., it's much easier to assume another human's point of view because you're similar. But a bat, you might be able to assume like 1% of it, but you can't fully understand what it's like to experience being a bat, okay? Because some of that experience is objective, but most of it is completely subjective, okay? To understand the ascription in the first person as well as in the third person, so to speak. So we can easily go from third to first and imagine ourselves in the third as the first. The more different from oneself the experience is, the less success one can expect with this enterprise. In our own case, we occupy the relevant point of view, but we will have each as much difficulty understanding our experience properly if we approach it from another point of view, as if we tried to understand the experience of another species without taking up its own point of view. Now here, it's got a huge footnote. Have a read of the footnote. This bears directly on the mind-body problem. For the facts of experience, facts about what it is like for the experiencing organism to be the experiencing organism, he didn't say that, but I'm just putting it in there, are accessible only from a point of view. So in other words, for what it is totally like, the complete facts are only accessible from one point of view. Take a note. Then it is a mystery how the true character of experiences could be revealed in the physical operation of that organism. So he's saying and this is really important, this is where it gets to the mind-body problem. The true character of experiences of that organism cannot be completely revealed in explaining the physical operation of the organism because that involves objective accounts. Take a note. The latter, the series says it, the latter is a domain of objective facts par excellence, in other words, when they're working their best. The kind that can be observed and understood from many points of view and by individuals from different perceptual systems. So when he's saying, when we're talking about the physical operation of an organism, we're actually, that's actually accessible to many different creatures with different points of views and different perceptual systems, i.e. the alien that doesn't see. There are no compatible imaginative obstacles to the acquisition of knowledge about bat neurophysiology by human scientists, and intelligent bats or Martians might learn about the human brain than we ever will. So what he's basically saying is there's nothing about neurophysiology that's inaccessible to any of us, because again, it involves an objective account of what's going on, right? And the issue here is the subjective account, okay? I'm just going to read this because I like the fact that he says here species for anyone on a continuum. So let's just read what he says here. It may be easier than I suppose to transcend interspecies barriers with the aid of the imagination. For example, blind people are able to detect objects near them by a form of sonar, using vocal clicks or taps of a cane. Perhaps if one knew what it was like, one could, by extension, imagine roughly what it was like to possess the much more refined sonar of a bat. So here we're saying, okay, some aspects of experience, not consciousness. That is very different. It's similar but different. Okay, we're saying experience. So what he's really alluding to here is some aspects of experience are objectively, well, have degrees of objectivity in them, though most of experience is subjective. Okay. The distance between oneself and another person and another species can fall anywhere on a continuum. Even for other persons, the understanding of what it is like to be them is only partial. And so that's what he's saying, the understanding of what it's like to be is only partial. So there is a degree of objectivity to understanding what it's like to be from the point of view experience. When one moves to species, it's very different from oneself. A lesser degree of partial understanding may be available. The imagination is remarkably flexible. My point here is not that we cannot know what it is like to be a bat. I'm not raising that epistemological problem. My point is rather to form a conception of what it is like to be a bat and a fortiori to know what it's like to be a bat. One must take up the bat's point of view. All right. So in other words, again, we go to that schema. To form a complete understanding and to conceive of what it's like to be a bat, we need to adopt that point of view, which we can't do. If one can take it up roughly or partially, then one's conception will be roughly or partial. So in other words, if we can have a rough conception, then we have a rough understanding. But that's all we can really get. Okay, we need to have a full conception of what it's like to be a bat. We need to have the complete bat's point of view. Take a note. Also, it seems in our present state of understanding, of course. This is not by itself an argument against reduction. A Martian scientist with no understanding of visual perception could understand the rainbow or lightning or clouds as a physical phenomena, though he would never be able to understand the human concepts of rainbow, lightning or cloud, or the place these things occupy in the phenomenal world. Again, phenomenal world is a reference to subjective experience from a kind of Kantian phenomenological point of view. So the Martian can understand the objective nature of it, okay? And then we can still actually have a materialist reductionism, kind of like the way SMART works. But then again, I don't know why he's saying that, because I think it's pretty clear that he believes that consciousness can only be understood from a particular point of view. And maybe experience has partial elements of objectivity in it, but the majority of it is still subjective. So again, doesn't that argue that there are phenomena or facts or things that exist outside of what can be objectively argued or accounted for, and therefore there are things that are, transcending the material world or the objective physical world? The objective nature of things picked out by these concepts could be apprehended by him, because although the concepts themselves are connected with a particular point of view and a particular visual phenomenology, the things apprehended from that point of view are not, of course. So we can describe the things, and when we talk about the things, we're using objective frameworks. Take a note. They are observable from the point of view, but not external to it. They are observable from the point of view, but external to it. Of course, lightning is external. Consciousness isn't. Right? Hence, they can be comprehended from other points of view also, either by the same organism or by others. Lightning has an objective character that is not exhausted by its visual appearance, and this can be investigated by a Martian without vision. To be precise, it is a more objective character than is revealed in its visual appearance. So the actual nature of what lighting is very different from consciousness. Okay, it's a completely objective phenomenon. It's external to us, and that triggers off the sense data or the perception. So we can use a very kind of objective account of to explain what it is and understand what it is. Can we say the same about consciousness or experience? Hey. In speaking of the move from subjective to objective characterization, I wish to remain non-committal about the existence of an endpoint, the completely objective intrinsic nature of the thing which one might or might not be able to reach. it may be more accurate to think of objectivity as a direction in which the understanding can travel, i.e. I go to one side of the pole to understand a phenomena, and I can find that this phenomenon can be explained easily using objective language and objective accounts. And in understanding a phenomenon like lightning, it is legitimate to go as far as one can from a strictly human viewpoint. Now here we go. In the case of experience, on the other hand, the connection with a particular point of view seems much closer. So point of view is a reference to consciousness, okay? It is difficult to understand what could be meant by the objective character of an experience apart from the particular point of view from which the subject apprehends it. So here we go. Here we have the objective kind of framework. Write that down. We all understand that experience has a particular point of view. And that's how experience is kind of apprehended. So if we understand that that's what's in common with all other forms of experience, maybe that's the objective component of experience that we can understand, but we can't understand the other stuff, yeah? Or we can't fully know or conceptualize about the other stuff. Take a note. After all, what would be left of what it was like to be a bat if one removed the viewpoint of the bat? Exactly. You know, but if experience does not have, in addition to its subjective character, which we've just proven it does, its objective nature, an objective nature that can be apprehended from many different points of view, then how can it be supposed that a Martian investigating my brain might be observing physical processes which were my mental processes, as he might observe physical processes which make bolts of lightning occur, only from a different point of view? How, for that matter, could a human physiologist observe them from another point of view? In other words, to make the supposition, which most of us are okay with, and to make the correlation between brain states and physical states, most of us would say, yeah, look, you know, we can pretty much say that there is a correlation occurring here. But that's only really the objective component of experience that we can really know from many different points of view. We might also know maybe basic understandings that it involves a point of view, but we can't fully understand what it is like to be in another person's mind, or to be a bat, to be a Martian, etc. So there's an objective component to experience, but the most of it is subjective, and of course consciousness is the point of view, right? So it's completely subjective. Take some notes. Okay, so did we draw on prior knowledge about materialist reductionism? Yeah, we know that he's deeply suspicious of its ability to account for consciousness. Okay. Did we explore phenomena that can be accounted for using objective accounts? Lightning, rainbows, okay. In fact, you wouldn't really explain what lightning is or a rainbow is using the subjective accounts, would you? You wouldn't do that. We also then had a look at consciousness. I believe consciousness is solely only the point of view, so it can only be accounted from a subjective POV. But experience, or maybe even consciousness, if we argue that there's a correlation between brain states and we tend to observe behaviours that are indicative of certain mental states, and we say, look, there's a correlation between this mental state that we've observed as a behaviour and this brain state, then we could argue there's an objective account of experience, but that is just the objective aspect of it. The quality of phenomenological experience, or the quality of the point of view, is not really included in the materialist account of what's going on. Okay, so we could argue that experience involves both. You know, it involves a small aspect of, or a partial aspect of an objective account, but it involves a large aspect of a subjective account. And consciousness, well, I still think that he's saying, and you need to do better than me, but I still think he's saying that consciousness is a very, very subjective account. I can see an argument for saying that some mental states are indicative of consciousness, and you can see the brain states that correspond to it. So there might be a slight argument for the fact that your point of view is created by given material brain states, but overall it is a very, very subjective phenomenon and really requires a subjective account. It's much it can only really be explained over there in the subjective side of the pole. And that's because it's an inward experience. It's not external to us like lightning, okay? Did we explore consciousness and experience? Yes, consciousness isn't the same thing as experience. Consciousness is the fact that you have a point of view. Experience is, well, what is happening in the moment of time when you have that point of view. And we can see the correlations it has with some brain states, so it involves a little bit of an objective account. And again, we placed it on the continuum when we had a look at that, when we had a look at the diagram. All right, so can you please, pretty please with the cherry on top, go back and answer the exam-like question? That would be super awesome. And thank you for listening to a really long and rushed video. Thank you.